Welcome back to the Director's Garage. I am your resident idiot, Michael, and I'm so glad you guys enjoyed the shootout the other day.
Awesome.
And I want to talk about one thing regarding that, and that's, I said this in earlier videos, and I really wasn't clear at the start of the shootout. Everything that I did, the comparisons, were going through the WA5LE, my tube amp, my very, very, very expensive tube amp that's been upgraded and has the top end tubes in it. And the whole purpose for that sequence of finding new headphones, over ears, was to find something I could pair with the WA5LE. And not because it's the best amp ever, it's an amp that I've had for a long time, and it's my best amp, and I'm not going to be able to sell it because nobody in their right mind would pay what that amp is worth, or at least what I have invested in that amp, or close to it. So the reason for that shootout was to determine a best pairing with the WA5LE. Now, that's not to say that the ZMF Verite wouldn't have performed better or had that deeper sub-bass kick or some of the things that we had been discussing about in the comments below if we had paired it with a different amp. I just don't have the resources to have every amp in the world here, and manufacturers clearly aren't sending me loads of gear. This is all being funded, by the Bank of Directors Garage. So, so we are where we're at. Now, this is a perfect bridge, by the way, into today's subject, because I have a new What's in the Box, and it's a very... stand by. And let's just say it's a king-sized, supersized What's in the Box. Now, I purchased this product 2 years ago. It was announced in January of 2018 that they were going into production, and I immediately did a pre-order on them. And this is long before YouTube was ever in the picture. I had no idea I'd be doing this channel. And really, at the end of the last episode, that was such a long and involved, clearly production intense episode to do, I was going to take a break for a week or so. But then I got an email notice that they were shipping this product that I ordered 2 years ago. So here we are in front of this box, which we are now going to slice open.
Ouch.
And share with you all. And if you noticed in the background, it's voting day in America. And as such, this product is 100% made, built, designed in America.
Hello.
It's a uniquely American product. Bubble wrap again. Damn it. Now I know you're asking, what could possibly require this level of packing? Stay with me, stay with me.
Wise guy, eh?
Are you ready? Oh, Western Electric 300B. All right, let's pull this out because they're sending me some stuff with this clearly.
What's all the hubbub?
It's so cool. All right.
Nice.
And this is a bunch of interesting packing sort of material about the 300B. A new 91E amp that they're touting. Looks like a poster. Kind of cool. What do you think?
Jeepers creepers.
And then this is all wrapped up down here. I don't know what this is. Oh, dudes. Okay, I didn't order this. This I did not order. This was just in the package. You know as much about this as I do. This was not, nobody told me about this. Look at this shit.
Well, whistle me, Dixie.
How frickin' cool is this? This is metal. This is a metal plate.
Sabe.
I'm going to stop for just a second in this unboxing because you should know, years and years and years ago, my father worked for Western Electric. He worked with their audio division and designing cables and switches and things like that. So there is a little bit of history, and I'm from Chicago, so there's a little bit of tie to this company that maybe goes beyond normal.
I'm telling my dad.
This is a metal. Can you hear that? And then it looks like they sent me a t-shirt. Western Electric High Fidelity. Let's take a look at that. So we're going to take a look at the tubes next. Stay with me. I'm going to magically... If you're really not making sense of this video yet, this will help right here. This is the prize. This is what it is that I ordered 2 years ago when I heard that these were going back into production. And that's... Okay, well, there's a box inside of a box.
Oh, man!
You know, none of my unboxings are ever going to go perfect. So let's take a look at the tube. What do you say?
Oh, boogers.
Boy, they're teasing me. They're teasing you too. I'm gonna go all the way under here and there we have it. This is the new production 300B tube from Western Electric. And there's a history behind this tube I'm going to talk about now, and we'll go into some B-roll.
Cool.
The 300B is an iconic tube for amplification. It's been out of production for a number of years now, and oh, look at this. This is the original. They even replicated the original artwork. Okay, so I did some research on this. I'm not Mr. Smarty Pants. This is all stuff that I looked up, but I'm going to tell it to you as if I know exactly what I'm talking about. I just looked this stuff up and pieced it together to tell you the story. Western Electric was a company that was established in Cleveland, Ohio in 1869. And they started their life producing gear to support the telegraph industry and Western Union. And then they also developed into a telecommunications company, making parts, physical parts that would help the phone system work in America. And back then it was all American Bell. It was everything. It was Bell Labs that ran everything. So they provided parts for American Bell to make the telephone industry work. Within a couple of years, Western Electric moved to Chicago, and in 1905 they opened a factory called the Hawthorne Works, and it's this legendary giant building on the south side of Chicago. And it sort of became a company campus, company neighborhood. And what was going on back then was companies were building factories and then building a town around the factory that the company supported and funded. They built out Hawthorne, their Hawthorne Works, to a town called Hawthorne that was all Western Electric funded houses, and also they had schools and stores and their own post office and their own fire department, electric plant, and all the workers who lived in Hawthorne then went to work at the Hawthorne Works, and you had to be working at the Hawthorne Works to be able to buy into this neighborhood. But it is a uniquely American experience. And one of the early scientists that worked for Western Electric was a guy named Lee DeForest, and he became a legend in American radio. In fact, he coined or promoted, I don't know if he invented the name, but he was the one who really pushed the name radio. Everywhere in Europe, if you went to Europe and said, turn on the radio, what you really wanted to say was, turn on the wireless. Well, that was because Marconi, his competitor in Europe, came up with the term wireless and was calling it wireless. In America, it was DeForest who coined radio. So what DeForest is probably best known for was he invented the Audion tube, the single-ended triode tube, which was really the first practical amplifier tube. It allowed amplification to take place. And this is what Western Electric was working on all throughout the early 1900s. Lee eventually sold some of those patents back to Western Electric, but by that point, Western Electric had grown into a pretty major company. They were supplying AT&T for their for wired telephone service all over the U.S., and they got involved in sound production for movies, and they actually invented a process that was used for a long time about how to marry sound to the film. And in the early 30s, they helped promote the original talkies. And all of this work culminated in the commissioning of a new tube in 1938, this is before the war, called the 300B. And in 39, the first 300B rolled off of the assembly line. Now, the 300B is a tube that's known for its quality, its sound quality, its amplification properties, all of these things. And it was really their attempt to modernize the original Audion tube and take it into the next era, which was transatlantic communications and advanced military communications over wireless, all of these kinds of things. And the 300B was really in its heyday up until the early 50s and the advent of the transistor, which is sort of phased the need for tubes out. So the use of the 300B sort of waned as the 50s rolled along. So by the early 1980s, tubes were pretty much all but dead. I mean, they were being used in guitar amps, but they weren't being used to power, home stereos or anything anymore by then. Everything was all transistors and moving into microchips. That was coming next. But some people went back and looked at this old technology, some audio files, and realized that some of this old gear, some of this old Western Electric gear, and some of the other stuff that was made back in the day had really high quality audiophile characteristics. And the demand for 300Bs, as people started designing amps for this again and using the old amps, started to rise, and Western Electric was producing them again. But in 1984, the government stepped in and broke up the Bell telephone system, and when they did that, Western Electric was sort of spun off to die, and they did. By 1988, this tube was no longer being made anymore. Now, an investor in the mid-90s came along and bought Western Electric and the tube technology and began producing tubes for a while in 1997, and it won a bunch of awards back then. It sort of furthered the legend, but eventually they again stopped making these tubes, and for a long time you couldn't get them. And the price of these tubes on the used market was going up to $10,000 for a pair. I mean, that's insane money for just a tube, but that's how highly regarded the sonic qualities of the original Western Electric 300B is. So as the prices began to rise on the Western Electric, a bunch of other manufacturers jumped in, and Sophia Electric and Mission Labs, and you know all these brands, PS Vane, and they were all making knockoffs of this or their own version of this. And eventually the company that really took the high end was Takatsuki, which is what I have in the app now. So imagine 2 years ago, I'm bumping around the web, and in January of 2018, I see that Western Electric announces they are going to build a new factory and start producing the original audiophile 300B tubes to the exact specifications, using the original schematics, using the same processes, the actual material that makes up the metal in the tube. They pulled from stuff from 1963 that they still had on hand and remelted it. I can tell you that the grid lathe, the machine that builds the grid, was the original 77-year-old machine, and they just retooled it. They had to rebuild that. And then some other things that sort of pull it even more into the modern era. They updated their clean room standards, they upgraded their water deionization process, they improved the anode carbonization process for longer tube life, and they also designed and built a new chemistry lab for the processing. And according to them, all of this modernization has led to runs that have greater consistency between the tubes. They're performing better, they're performing at a higher level than the original tubes, which is pretty cool considering they're using a 1938 design. I'm going to say that again, a 1938 design. It's before my parents were born. And I've been getting updates for several years now, periodically saying, we've built the factory and we're developing the stampers and the glass process and the wire creation, and it's all hand assembled, and all this really cool stuff kept coming to me. But again, it was vaporware. Who knew when it was going to come out? And then 2 weeks ago, I got a notice that my 300Bs were being ready to ship. Okay, the amp is on. Nothing has blown up. That's a good thing. I'm not expecting to hear a drastic change going to this 300B, the Western Electric 300B. That's not to say nothing will happen. I just am not expecting anything crazy. And they're still popping, which is kind of interesting. When tubes are new, the metal expands and contracts, and you hear popping inside of your ears from the springs, like expanding and coming up to temperature. Kind of interesting. They sound really good. I don't know that I'm hearing anything drastically different from the Takatsuki. I'd have to really do some serious A/Bing but it's nuance, if anything. There's not anything drastic going on here. It's a very interesting proposition, though, because I'm hearing these tubes that I never thought I'd be able to own. Because they were all priced, I mean, $5,000 would buy you an old one with a lot of hours. And this is $10,000 is really the entry level for buying a Western Electric. And now they're available again for the first time. And I hope you guys enjoyed. This is really cool. Okay. What I can tell you just from a first listen is they don't sound worse than what I had. In fact, they sound better. But how much better, I don't know that it's going to be a massive difference. I do think that it's pretty darn cool, though, that this tube is being made again. And you can go out and buy them now.
Hooray!
That's pretty neat. And let's face it. I mean, I know that I was on the very first order. And for that, they sent me all of this really cool stuff. A letter, brochures, and then most impressively, the Western Electric poster, and then of course this gorgeous metal plaque, which is going on the wall somewhere. We're going to find a place for this in the director's garage. One other thing to note is make sure that if you do decide, because of this video, to buy the tubes, make sure you send your warranty card in, because the warranty on these tubes is 90 days. If you send your warranty card in, it extends it to 5 years.
Thank you.
I have not heard of any company guaranteeing their product, their tubes, for 5 years. So that's a really impressive thing that Western Electric is doing. It says that they're standing behind these products, and it makes me even more happy that I bought these. They're sounding fantastic so far, but it's nice to know that they're protected going forward. And given my family's connection to Western Electric, it's a neat day, and this was a fun experience. I hope you had fun diving into this really cool history. I find this to be pretty neat. Oh, and before I sign off, I got to ask you one last time to please like and subscribe. It does mean a lot to me that to see us growing in numbers and get these subscriptions up. It gets us closer to monetization, which can help maybe pay for some of this crap. And it also is more of like an emotional, hey, we're doing the right thing and we're moving forward and we're growing. It tells me that we're in the right direction and these things are worth doing. So likes and subscribes do mean a lot to me on an emotional level as much as it does on a practical level, and helps promote the page. So thank you for stopping by today. I know it's election day and I hope everything comes out the way you want it without getting political. I've got a new What's in the Box plan for later this week. Stay tuned for that. It's going to be a budget item, something that you can afford and we can afford. It's not going to be something crazy. So stay with me, and I will see you and be back before you know it.